Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Get started in just a second. Alrighty. Welcome. Good afternoon. We are here with WIOA Title I Quarterly Performance Office Hours. Before I get this passed on over to our wonderful presenters, I do want to introduce myself, give a little background information on today's webinar. My name is Mikhail English. I work for Illinois Center of Specialized Professional Services. I will be your moderator and your tech support today. A few things that might be helpful for you to know. Number one, this will be recorded and shared out about 48 hours after we meet today. If you do need closed captioning, that is available on the bottom of your screen. So at any point, feel free to enable that for convenience and accessibility. On top of that, for questions, just throw those in the chat. We may get to a few here and there during the presentation, but we're working to reserve all of those questions towards the end of our session together. And outside of that, I'm going to start with a few polls. So up on your screen, you should be seeing two questions, really just what is your role in the WIOA system? And then where is your local area? So I'll give you a few seconds to answer those two questions. Again, what is your role in the WIOA system? Seeing a lot of performance managers, career planner, mostly Central Illinois. Give about 10 more seconds. I still see some answers funneling through. Thank you for getting those done for us today. Alrighty. We're going to share those results for you all to see. So again, what is your role in the WIOA system? We're a little scattered, a lot in the Title I Career Planner. And then overall, we're in Central, Northern, and Southern. Thank you for taking the time to do that poll with us here today. And now with that, I'm going to pass it on to our wonderful presenters.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time today. We've got quite a few things to cover, various subjects that we cover with you and give you some updates as well as some new developments. I do have Paula Berry, our performance specialist, and Ray Alameen, our research technician, going to be helping with the presentation today. So again, as Michaela said, if you've got any questions, please put those in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. If I can respond in the chat, I will do that. If we want to respond verbally, we'll stop at the appropriate time or wait to the end to address your concerns. As you'll see here, we're just going to give a little general updates on various things. We're also going to address user audits that we've done recently and just give you a little bit more information about those. Give you an update on 2.0 developments. Many of you, as I look through the participant list, many of you are already participating at certain levels of discovery as content experts, subject matter experts, doing some utilization testing, UAT testing. So we appreciate all the time you're putting into this. I know it's been asking an awful lot of many of you, but believe us, we really appreciate it and we really need it too. You bring a perspective to the system, of the system and perspective to this discovery and development process that we couldn't do without you. So again, appreciate all your time. Paul's going to provide quite a few updates around eligible training provider list, some of the policy updates that are forthcoming, as well as changes that you'll see in 2.0. And Ray's going to assist with giving some performance reporting and policy updates that we have forthcoming. So a lot of today really is about what you'll see in the near future versus what has already happened. But we will give you some things that have happened at this point in time because we have some clarification and new guidance. Many of you have worked in the past couple of months, especially if you're a local systems administrator, uh, getting all of your SDA agreements together, all of your user audits, meaning you've had your staff complete all the appropriate documentation forms, sign those, and submitted those into Chris Tylen or Carrie Campardo. Again, another uh, bit of a time-consuming process, but it's something we have to do. I think we were over 300 users that we had to update this time around. We have many more that were already up to date. But one thing to keep note of, and unfortunately, we're going to have to go through this process again as we have new shared data agreements or SDAs forthcoming on July 1st. We do those as an agency with our partners every 3 or 4 years, and so once we get a new agreement, we have to get new forms completed and signatures submitted. So, bear with us as we ask for all of those again from even those staff that didn't do that this time around. Part of that is also trying to make sure we have updated documents. Sometimes people resign their position, change their roles, or otherwise are no longer in the need of access that they have currently in their submitted forms. We want to make sure that the local systems administrator are keeping these up to date on a regular basis. So as people come and go, change their roles, et cetera, just keep in mind that you do need to look at the current forms and see if there's a need to update those as well. Some of those, if there's change in information, somebody moves, somebody changes their phone number or whatever information is on the form, we need to get that in as soon as possible. We share those with our other partners who provide us with a lot of that data. Now, one good thing about that is as we transition to July 1st to 2.0, we're going to try to make this automated. It's not in our what we call MVP, that is something we have to have on July 1st. We hope to have it available on July 1st so that one of the first things everyone's going to be required to do as 2.0 gets rolled out is go through these SDA agreement forms and sign them electronically, and then we can share those with the appropriate agency. So we hope it's going to be a much more shorter process, easier process for everyone because it's going to be online. You can use an electronic signature. We will then document it. We'll library it. We'll send the forms over to our agency partners, and again, be much easier. We'll be sending out regular notifications to our local system administrators, just saying, hey, do you have anyone that's left in the last few months that maybe you forgot to let us know? Is there anybody been hired that they overlooked completing one of these? I think that should be overcome because I think the intent is the first time someone starts into the new system, whether it be on July 1st or thereafter, because they get hired in the future, they'll have to complete that. They won't be able to move forward. They won't be able to do their job if they don't complete the form and sign it. So we hope that's going to be a much easier. Chris is still around. He did a couple systems administrator trainings late last year, and he'll continue to do those. So as we get this new SDA agreement in place, and I'm sure we'll have him assist in providing some guidance to all of you in how to complete those forms. Oh, sorry, I didn't have it. I don't know if I had that slide up, but this is just the information that I just spoke about around the SDA and user audits. Some other developments around the IWDS 2.0. The biggest thing is there's going to be a lot of training coming. Obviously we can all anticipate that we need to learn a brand new system. For some of you using IWDS already, maybe it's not quite as dynamic a change. Although the look and feel certainly is going to be a considerable deviation from current IWDS, but especially those from the LWIA 7 Cook County area using Career Connect, it might be quite a bit different. So we're going to be asking you to go through some training. I've already mentioned that I appreciate all of you that have been part of these top 2 or 3 developments as far as either being subject matter experts in our discovery meetings, doing some UAT testing, all as we prepare for that July 1st deployment. We have regional trainers have been identified throughout the state. There's some 11 or 14. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number. Some LWIAs have multiple trainers. They'll be contacting all the local areas that fit within their region. And it's not an economic development region defined in that way. It's just how our NOFOs got developed and what LWIAs each of the trainers have been assigned. So look forward to those, identifying when training sessions will be held. We're going to be starting those in April as far as some online virtual sessions. Maybe our performance and ETPL can be done if we have policy ready. We can do some of that in April. But the heavy lift is going to be in June. I'm sorry, May and June, where not only will it be virtual trainings along the way, but we will have 2 day in-person trainings that everyone will have to be a part of. And those trainers are working on that schedule now, trying to give all of your staff, all of you, as early notice as possible to where those locations will be, what the 2 dates will be for those. The hope is that having regional trainers, it will limit the need for too much travel. So, for instance, if you're in LWIA 4, we have a trainer there, and they're also helping with LWIA 3. So that trainer will come up to LWIA 3, so you don't have to drive to LWIA 4 where the trainer is located at. And again, the intent here is to try and limit the amount of travel that might take. So various subjects you see here in the little funnel, the 2.0 users specific. We're going to talk about ETPL in those trainings. ETPL coordinators have some new responsibilities once we roll out 2.0, along with some new policy. And then from our shop, we've got some performance and reports that we'll have to go over. We're going to carry some of the reports over from the two current systems. We've been working with Career Connect to learn what reports they have that are value to keep in the new system. Carry some of the reports over from IWDS. But the real benefit of the new 2.0 system is you'll be able to create some of your own ad hoc reports. You'll be able to identify the data points you want to put into a report by checkbox. If you're familiar with iPads, how you can do reports now by looking at a list on the right-hand column and saying, I only want these 5 pieces of information. You'll be able to do that in IWDS 2.0. Haven't ironed out the correlation between what iPads is now compared to what's going to be in 2.0. Some of the information may be in each individual career planner or staff dashboard versus iPads directly, but we'll have that all included when we do training. And then we'll have some sessions, quite a few sessions I think they're planning for the Illinois Workforce Summit. You should already have some information on that in those weekly professional development sessions. Please get registered. I know some people will be holding back doing that until they see the agenda. So hopefully the team will be getting the agenda out and at least the topics in the near future so you can plan accordingly. I know the hotel where we have been having these this year, it's in East Peoria again at the Embassy Suites and the adjacent community center there or conference center. I know the hotels are pretty slim right now, but there are a lot more hotels just located in the vicinity if Embassy Suites is already full. And then we're going to be utilizing the WIOA Wednesday webinars as we are today, whether that be the morning, afternoon, or both, to do some of these trainings to keep you all up to date. I'm going to turn it over to Paula to talk a little bit about ETPL and some of the performance implications that are forthcoming. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, so today, like Mark said, this is a lot of updates for any of you who are curious. And I see the participants, so it's a good audience for some of these updates. First, our state ETPL policy. So everyone knows it's been in the works. It seems like a couple of years. We were waiting on the federal US DOL to sign off. Right now, we're very close. As Mark knows, we are meeting at least once a week to finalize the last few chapters of this policy. It's forthcoming. I don't have a release date, but it's so close that we feel that we can give you a few updates on what to expect, what will be new in the policy. So in the new policy, once it's released, there shall be local ETPL coordinators assigned in each LWIA, which there already are. We've begun outreach. With that comes a new step, or I should say, omission of a step. It'll no longer be required that the LWIB must review every single provider's training program for approval for the state ETPL, initial or continued. So you can have someone in your local area who can have the oversight to approve it based on policy criteria. That's an option. We're not saying that LWIB can't have a say, but we think this will be a big time saver to skip a step. If you have to wait on your LWIB to meet just to give you the go-ahead to approve a training program, you can skip that. So again, that will be optional, but we think it will help with turnover and number that you have to review when we move to the new system. So with it being said that we need to have a local ETPL, okay, yeah, I kind of see the chat. This is not implemented. This is a complete draft. It is not released, and I don't have a release date. We're just giving you kind of a heads up of things that will be mentioned in the policy. So with it being said that we all have a local ETPL coordinator in each LWIA, there will be a significant amount of training for everyone on the new policy as it's tied to the new system, IWDS 2.0, and it will be the ETPL data collection portal. There is a USDOL 10. It's not a TEAGL. It is TEN 2519, and it's called Understanding WIOA Credentials. This will be really important for all the LWIAs to review with staff, because it's all about what is a WIOA credential, what is recognized for WIOA, because we see it all the time where there's certificates, credentials, but WIOA has its own rules, and understanding that is found in that training and employment notice. So with IWDS 2.0 ETPL data entry portal, there's coming up, there'll be even more local ETPL coordinator outreach for technical assistance in the new system. So this isn't necessarily policy. It'll be more programmatic or procedural. Training providers will be urged to complete their own submittal of their training program applications for the state ETPL initially and continually using this system. So that will be an electronic submittal of applications. Mark and Sarah Blaylock did surveys with various questions to every single LWIA, and we were asking, what do you do? Do you give your providers IDs, and why? And that was, a lot of it was to be able to track the data that they're changing, so they're not in there changing things and you have no way to see it. But the new system will log every single training program piece of information. Every field is going to be logged. So every time you look at a single element like training program name, you'll see if it was ever changed. A zip code, those shouldn't always change. ONETs, method of instruction, outcomes, all of that. So it'll be so much easier to track in that manner. It won't be, we won't say your training providers cannot have access, or no, we won't say that you must give every single training provider. They're the only person who can do it. That's not the case. It will be highly suggested, the way the new system is being developed, to track the changes and you'll have a dashboard and notifications. And then right now, all of these screens for the training provider entities, as well as all of our training program information screens are in user acceptance testing. And I think they'll be rolled out to the field to test pretty soon. Next slide, please. That was the bulk of that ETPL update. This is just a slide, an informational slide for review. These are what our ETPL coordinators' responsibilities will be with when working with new or their continuing providers. Everyone's always doing this. We have a policy, a current policy that we know we need to verify their information. The provider needs to be accredited, authorized to operate, be a little bit more tied to locations in the new system. We need to pay attention and verify the details of each location. The ONET and SOC code, since the DODL will still be in effect, our demand occupation training list, this will be a critical program element. They need to have at least one ONET, will be easily tracked. In training, one thing that we will note when we're reviewing these applications is that if they don't submit an application with at least one occupational code that's on our DODL, can you say denied? Yes, you don't meet it. You don't have an in-demand occupation. However, we're going to have a little bit of human intervention here. If they have an ONET that doesn't make sense, maybe they're unaware, we're just going to be prepared to work with them and maybe suggest, here's our DODL. It looks like this training program of study probably is associated with some. Not as a way in, but that's just one small example of what we will be looking at. So be prepared to share and utilize the demand occupation training list, not just in career planning, but for ETPL review. Back to understanding outcomes. When we say outcomes, we mean the WIOA recognized credential, and that ties back to the TA that will be provided around all the credentials and that training and employment notice. There's a new step, a new rule in policy. This was suggested, it was a recommendation by United States Department of Labor when they looked at our current, or it's kind of old now, our ETPL policy, and that is that it's a state ETPL that must be provided first and foremost. So there needs to be someone providing the final approval at the state. So there'll be a state ETPL coordinator, and WIOA's role will be just as significant as now than ever with all the reviews, but a button will be, okay, I attest this information is complete, they're authorized, I'm recommending it to the state to approve for the ETPL. There's a new window in draft policy, and that's 30 days. So when a provider submits their training program for initial or continued, the WIOA, the local ETPL coordinator, has 30 days to review it and recommend it to the state. Recommend it, I approve it, it's authorized, meets policy, or I'm not recommending because of these reasons, right? So then someone at the state and OET will be able to track this, and then we will have 30 days to then verify the information is there and basically agree to approve or agree that it's not meeting for denial. This is all laid out in policy. There's going to be a significant amount of technical assistance. So next slide, please. I just wanted to point out that's one of the very new concepts that we're not used to. So we're trying to get a handle on preparation for transition of all of our current training providers and their programs, that when the system is go live, they will show up in the new system. So right now, we're just asking that when programs come up for renewal or even initial, kind of keep an eye on for example, the training program descriptions. There's edit checks when we report on them. Keep an eye on the data, the information there. It should really match what the providers tell you, but also their websites. That's a big one. If you want to check out the website they give you that takes you to the training program, that would be great. We want to transition it as clean as possible. So we're not saying go look at every single one, but when you come across them, it will be really beneficial. So right now, providers with user IDs, anytime they go in and update their information and save it, it resets the status of the program. We're not looking to tell providers to go in and clean up any little spelling or change a program name with an abbreviation, to match the course catalog. That's not what we're saying at all. But at the local WIA user level, you could do that. In the future, we have those critical fields that if they're changed, they will reset the status for review. Right now, honestly, if you look at the training program information screen, those critical fields aren't as clear cut as they will be. So it'll be so much more transparent when I'm changing something that's going to change the status of this program. You will be alerted, warned, all of that. So whatever you can do now will be extremely helpful. Then reporting for IWDS 2.0, same as now, we're going to have all those edit checks. We need to have training program descriptions. Well, eventually in 2.0, we're going to have training provider descriptions, and they need to have certain amounts of data and be unique. That's all done behind the scenes. You won't have to worry about that. As long as your data entry that you're inputting is clean and meets the specs that you'll see. I mean, you'll be aired out if you try to enter some weird numerical values in fields. So that'll just be handled by this behind the scenes as always. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is kind of completely changing gears from the ETPL, and it's talking about the Pearl. So this is the record layout that we input all of our participant data into, and it produces our WIPs. United States Department of Labor asked for some updates. So for participants, this is like target population data. They're asking us to add an option to select Middle Eastern or North African descent for race and ethnicity. This slide's informational. I don't need to go over it all right now, but so you'll be asked to add military connected, non-priority of service, and that's a specific definition. I am not the expert on all of this, but it is a ticket being requested and will be deployed. So there's new fields for the long-term unemployed. These new characteristics will apply, and Mark can fill us in on if this is deployed into production in IWDS or not. And those are the characteristics you will be asked to data enter. And we'll send a notice when this does get deployed, like we always do. There was a deployment in IWDS. Please be aware.
Yeah, thanks,
Next
Paula.
slide, please,
Yeah, I
unless
just
you
want
have
to.
something to add.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in while we're on this slide. It's key to realize the second bullet there about military connections, that it is non-priority of service. So once we get this in the field of IWDS, and then it'll be in 2.0, if they check any one of these, it doesn't elevate them to priority of service. It's just new fields. They're continuing to try to break down further the target population, as Paula said. So we have to respond because when we submit our quarterly and annual reporting, they want us to be able to put these in. And if we don't have these fields completed, then it'll look odd that Illinois maybe has a low number or none. Obviously, this first year, it's probably going to be a fairly low number. We've got some other changes we're going to talk about on the next slide, but what we're going to do the best we can to complete fields based on what information's already in the system. In these three instances, we really can't because we have nothing that would dictate any of these three items. So, we know we're going to be lax on the information this time around, but hopefully it's in the system. And by starting to complete these now, people will be familiar with the fields. And when we kick off 2.0, we'll get that information from day one for program year 2026 reporting, and then we'll be back up to speed where we need to for DOL.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Quick performance update. So where we are right now is our PY 2025 Q2 outcomes are about to be final. That means that Jeff right now, I mean, as we speak, is probably in the process of certifying these and sending them to United States Department of Labor to meet our deadline. So with that data, there's really nothing else we can do. In the system, we usually send out a notice like, please update MSG's credentials, exit anyone you need to, so quarterly reporting is as complete as possible. Honestly, for PY Q2, performance is never as robust as it is towards Q3, especially, and obviously Q4 and final. So just wanted to point that out. But right now we're moving into PY 2025 Q3. These will be final. We'll get the wages, submit the report mid-May of 26. This is especially important this year because the state and US DOL negotiations are happening again late spring. We don't have a date yet, late spring or early summer 2026. So this spring, early summer, we'll be negotiating on goals for PY 26 and PY 27. So we'll get to use our PY 2025 Q3 outcomes as a resource to use to negotiate. So that's really important that we get as much data in there as possible. So yeah, again, it says it in the slide, we're relying on really robust data, and whatever you can do to update MSG's credentials, supplemental employment, other post-exit outcomes will really help us, especially exiting on time and getting training services closed. All services should be current, training especially important. So for MSGs, I don't want to just pick on this one measure here. So since you have options to enter them, it's not a wage match, it's not a credential match. We would just like to ask to please try to get those in currently and for real time, even if you know someone had an MSG last quarter, but you don't really need it yet because you have until July 1st, end of June. Go ahead and enter it. Not to cause a huge burden, but it will be important. We can get those knocked out and get a real idea of where we are. Please try to start showing a variety of MSGs, even if you know that they have like their EFL gain from a pre and a post test or something else. If there's another outlying type of MSG that they have, like they took some tests, please go ahead and try to document those. So we just included some ways to figure out how you are right now with MSGs. Even though we have time, we have the dashboard in iPads, so you can look at the row, and you would filter for adult or dislocated worker or youth, and look at the row that says with or without MSGs recorded. There's both. There's one with MSGs recorded, and then those without MSGs recorded. There's a hyperlink with a number, and you can see your entire list of those needing MSGs. And then find out how you're doing compared to the rest of the state. I'm not picking on anyone. I didn't even run this long enough to do an analysis of who might be putting in more MSGs or not. But you can look at all the LWIAs and see where y'all are at with your MSG rates. All the measures for that matter. But the MSG is probably the most hands-on data entry requiring measure for you all. So yeah, so on the right side in IPEP, so you see the dashboard at the very top. It's not a huge hyperlink, but it just says data graphs. And that will drop down and there's a row that says LWIA comparison, and it will pull up all of the LWIAs in bar graphs with outcomes. Again, it's still very early. We're only in Q2, so I'm not trying to pick on anybody's performance. Next slide, please. Okay, so a couple more things on measurable skills gain. What we're doing right now is we're trying to finalize the OET policy. If you look in e-policy right now and click through the performance policies, some of them say coming soon or something like that. We need to get this MSG policy updated, and we're actively working on that. There'll be the policy, will look a lot like Teagle 1016 change 3, and there will also be an additional policy document that has the extra information, so you don't have to read such a long policy to get to the main point. With that, we completely plan on providing attachments that we can easily change, that will be much more informational with examples for you all that we've all been working on and you have asked for. There will be a state policy. They're going to add one for effectiveness in serving employers. So right now, the state just has to do it. We use all your data to do it. In the future, I think there were talks about drilling this measure down to an LWIA level. The exit policy, when you look in e-policy, we know this is outdated, even for the current system. It is being updated. The one thing that you will note, I think every single person on this call I can see knows this, but the current policy says that you may exit someone right away if you know they're not talking to you anymore. You know, if this is done on accident, we'll remove it, but no. We can, no matter what, we're not to exit someone right now until 90 days have passed, no matter what. The major update to this policy will be to reflect the requirement that exits will be automated. So we won't be clicking on a button to exit someone. They will occur in the system after 90 days with no service. Don't worry, there's things in place that will help you track this better than ever, in my opinion, and there's more to come on that with a huge amount of technical assistance for understanding that. So that the MSG policy will be done before the exit policy, in case you go in there and wonder about that. Updates to co-enrollment and common exit, not a lot to be said here. We have co-enrollments with trade or dislocated worker or adult and youth. But when they say common exit here, they're talking about being fully integrated. And right now we can't see one of our adult WIOA Title I adult who is also fully enrolled with Title III or Title IV. You know, that's not showing up in the system, but that's what that means. They're going to have to be exited together, but since they're not talking right now, we don't have that level of common exit with partner programs. One last thing, because I mentioned it before, the USDOL released a change 3 to their data validation Teagle. Why this is important is because attachment 2. So I just Googled the Teagle name and change 3, and it takes me right to DOL's page. And I always click the Excel link. So their attachment 2, and they say revised, the source documentation, you can go straight to a performance measure and it lists in bullet points what you're expected to have in the file. They did give us a new one for an MSG. Honestly, I have not done a side by side for every new piece of source documentation that they're allowing now. And I'm not. I'll look at some of the performance measures. But anyway, for the MSG skills progression, on the left-hand column, it's number 1810. But this is the skills progression, the fifth type of MSG, where we kept talking about tests. This is really tests and exams. If there's not a test, you don't get to count this. And don't tell us that you have a credential and that's their test because we want the test. Well, guess what? In this change, it clearly states that you can have a copy of a credential. The credential is not the MSG, but like we said, it's evidence that a test was taken and passed. So you get to use a copy of their credential. You'll probably already have that anyway, but it needs to be required for a particular occupation and is only earned after the passage of an exam. So if it's a credential that you didn't need a test for, I don't know what that would be. I'm sure you all can tell me, but that's not what you get to count here. But it has to be a credential that is evidence they passed a test or exam. I'm only bringing that up because a lot of performance people wanted that. It was a huge burden to try to get all those tests to count this skills progression. So now knowing that, you can go out before the end of the year and report tons and tons of these MSGs. Okay, well, with that said, I will hand it back over to Mark and Ray.
All right, thank you, Paula, and good afternoon, everybody. On this slide, do a quick walkthrough of forthcoming policy updates to how Illinois is assessing performance, along with changes to sanctions, appeals under the updated federal guidance. First, on assessing performance, the SAM pilot project notice is being rescinded, and we're fully transitioning to standard policy for the PY 2024 assessments using SAM adjustments. We're also simplifying how performance is measured. The overall local indicators score and the overall local program score, both previously set at 90%, are being removed. And going forward, performance is evaluated at the individual indicator level. Now, successful performance is defined as achieving at least 70% of the adjusted level for that indicator. So this will help create clearer, more transparent expectations and just keeps the focus on each specific measure rather than overall composite scores. Next, for new performance sanctions under the reissued federal guidance, the emphasis is going to be on early support rather than penalties. If a local area is unsuccessful in a single indicator in the first year, then the response is collaborative technical assistance. So this is not a sanction and it's not punitive. It actually just reflects what OET already does, and that's partnering with, local areas to understand what's driving the outcome and identifying strategies early so that issues don't carry forward. Now, a performance improvement plan will be available and can be used if helpful, but it is optional. Corrective action only comes into play after repeated unsuccessful performance in the same indicator over multiple years. So specifically by the third year. So at that point, a formal corrective action plan, including a potential reorganization plan, may be required. So here, the structure is intentional. It's support first and escalation only if challenges persist. Now, for appeals, we've also established a clearer appeals process that's related specifically to performance sanctions. So, if a corrective action or sanction is formally issued, a local area may request reconsideration, if they believe that the determination was inaccurate or inconsistent with state policy. So I think one important distinction that I want to make here is that appeals apply only to formal sanctions or corrective actions. So collaborative technical assistance is not a sanction. So it's actually a support strategy. So because it doesn't impose penalties or formal findings, it's not subject to appeal. So the appeals process is reserved for official, corrective action or sanction determinations. So I think overall with this slide, there's like really three key takeaways that I'd ask you to keep in mind. So the first is assessments are now indicator based and tied to 70% of the adjusted level. Second, the first response to underperformance is collaborative support, not sanctions. And then thirdly, formal appeals apply only if a corrective action or sanction is issued. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mark to close this out.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ray, for covering all that, and we'll go ahead and finish up here, and then wait for any questions. We'll open up microphones to allow you to ask any other questions. I know we've gone over a lot of stuff, and I anticipated we wouldn't need the entire hour and a half today, and usually we say that, and your questions maybe dictate differently, but we are coming to the end of what we're presenting. We just want to remind everyone, there's always ongoing technical assistance from our unit. Um, there will be an eye patch training. I think you would have seen that in the professional development weekly announcements on Monday. There is no, we did get a couple questions. It does say register, um, which usually is the process for attending these WIOA Wednesday webinars when they're training specific and not our office hours. But ignore the word register in that box. It really is the link to the upcoming iPatch training that's going to happen on March 4th. We had some people, like I say, respond and say, hey, when I click it, it takes me actually into a Zoom room and I don't get to register. Well, you won't need to register for that session. Similar to today, it's a static URL link to that session without registration required. So that's kind of why we go through the process every time on getting your location and your role, and while we might not know specifically who some of you are based on the name that's in the participant list. We at least know where we're presenting, who's receiving the information, and if we see that there's areas of the state or particular roles that seem to be missing when something is presented, we can reach out to those local areas and discuss with them. The Illinois Workforce Summit for 2026 is upcoming. As I mentioned early on, it's in East Peoria at the Embassy Suites on this. That may be wrong. It may be the 6th and 7th. So I apologize. I may have the wrong dates there. It's Wednesday, Thursday. So we'll get this corrected. But I think if someone has their calendar out in front of them, correct me. But I think I was looking at that this morning, and I'm pretty sure it's actually the 6th and 7th. I'm going to change that for you here, but we will have to change it in the document that gets uploaded. It is the May 7th. So, okay, so it's Thursday, Friday. All right, we'll leave it at May 7th and 8th. Anyway, we look forward to many of you coming. There will be a few performance sessions. NIU will present several of those that they do every year. They do a lot of studies and evaluations, and they like to present the findings of those in their webinars. Andy Blank and myself will be there to provide a little bit of updates on the statistical adjustment model. As I mentioned this, Sam, you saw some changes, you know, last year's program year will have the same adjustments. We are still waiting for all the data that's needed to create the adjustments in the SAM. So, apologize that it takes as long as it does. We still don't have our assessments from DOL. We have to wait for those to see what the results of those are before we could issue local assessments anyway. I suspect with a couple different shutdowns now, one fairly lengthy at the federal level. It may be a little bit later than normal. So bear with us as we continue to await our assessments, and then we'll work towards getting yours out. And then our next performance office hours will be in May on the 13th. And you see the final two dates of the 2026 schedule. And because of holiday, we do have to change the final one of the year, as many people will be off on the 11th of November. In that office hours, some of the things we'll continue to focus on updates to some of the topics we talked about today, especially if we have some policy and changes in the system out. We can maybe bring up actual versus projected or anticipated. We'll also talk a little about the fact that PY 26 and 27 negotiations will be happening later this year. So we'll have some information about that we can get that process started. We'll also have, dedicated training on that later in the year, probably after the July 1 IWITS 2.0 trainings and deployment occur. So sometimes in middle to late July, we'll probably have the first technical assistance webinar on negotiations. And we may be reaching out to some of you to help us with that material. We do have our work group that always helps, but just want to make sure that we're addressing your needs in the process. We've received very few comments about the last 2 or 3 years of process on the negotiations, so we feel comfortable if we move forward in a similar way that you all are accepting of it and agree with it. But we may still reach out to some of you and just get a little final input. And then I mentioned early on there will be a ton of technical assistance around IWITS 2.0. Some of it Paula, Ray, and I'll be involved in because it relates to our shop as far as ETPL and performance, but a lot of it will be system specific, especially at the career planner level, learning how to input all the data and information. And I'll reiterate and remind you of Paula's statement. We really need you to start having staff get information in the system as promptly as possible, because the development team will start migrating information over to see how the development is reacting. And the more information they can have in there, the better off it's going to be for them to find maybe bugs that were overlooked in UAT or other items that that would otherwise maybe be missed if it's very skeletal amount of information. So we want to get as much updated information in there. Reminder is, for the most part, a 10-day period we give you in policy if a service or activity occurs. If a career planner is made aware of a service or activity by one of your grantees, that information should get in within 10 days. We've been a little bit lax on that, but 2.0 is going to be a little bit different in that it's going to push a lot of that stuff. And please be prepared to attend the IPATS training I mentioned at the top there, because some of you aren't using the Illinois Performance Accountability and Transparency System right now, but that's going to be your go-to when 2.0 gets deployed. You won't have IWDS that you're familiar with, and those of you in the Northeast area with Career Connect won't have that. So you'll have to become familiar very quickly with IPATS if you already aren't. So get in there, look around it, run some reports that are there now. If you come to the class or the session on March 4th with questions, Heather Lawrence and the team there at SIU will be providing that. Come prepared so that we can make sure we're addressing your needs and ensuring that you have as clear instruction as possible. Get that behind us before we jump into really the heavy lift of the 2.0. That'll just be one thing we don't have to worry about as much. People will be familiar with it. I mentioned a new, well, it's not new, but the ETPL email. We've shared these now in several of our office hours and other trainings. Uh, we want to give you clear guidance on who to contact, so that we can respond to you as promptly as possible. You know, so that we know who is the individual responsible for that. Many of these, Paula, Ray, and I are looking at. Some of them bring Chris Thailand into the discussion. So, when possible, please use the demand occupation training list email and the ETPL email so that any of us uh, access to that email can respond promptly, especially if you're talking with training providers and you're needing some clarification. Send those into that ETPL coordinator email so all of us can respond to those. Otherwise, you see who's responsible for each of these various topics. Utilize those individuals and the CC so that we can again ensure that we receive it quickly and can respond quickly, especially like the IWDS outages. You do a great job reaching out. You used to do a outreach to Jim Potts. He's retired, as everyone knows, so now it's Chris Tyland. We want to make him aware of any kind of outages immediately so that he can reach out to do it and have them look into why maybe there's a system failure. I'm going to knock on one and say that we had a period of time where we seem to have a lot of Monday issues. I haven't noticed that as much in the last couple months, so I hope that whatever issues were causing that have been resolved by Do It. But if you see something, maybe check with a coworker to see if it's your system. Maybe you need to reboot your computer. See if it's happening with anyone else before you submit that. But once you do identify there is a problem, make sure you get those to Chris as quickly as possible. CC Mark and I'm sorry, Paula and I, in case Chris is out for the day or is otherwise busy, because that's the one we need to address immediately. All these other ones, we can wait a few minutes or an hour or even the next day sometimes. But certainly the IWDS outages and issues, we need to get to Do It as promptly as possible. Um, so I think we had answered all the questions until here, Robert. When does DCO require all performance data and supporting documentation to be finalized for both our local and state performance measures? Your performance is built on what's in the system. We've said this before. If it's not in the system, it didn't happen. We find that a lot with the MSGs that Paula talked about, where, people wait till the end of the year to put the MSG in the system, even though it might have been earned in December. And that just leads to sometimes overlooking getting it into the system. The new system's going to be a lot better, sending reminders. I mentioned in the chat while Paul was presenting, the new system and the new ETPL application process for programs. We will be asking providers to give us MSGs and credentials. When are they expected to be earned? And those will be part of the participants' career plan, universal career plan, so that we can monitor that throughout the process and say, if I'm in a 6-week training, there's 3 MSGs identified. We want to make sure that the individual attain those MSGs, and if not, what needs to happen to get them back on track so that they're successful. And you all, with the hard work you do and working with these individuals, are getting the credit you need. We really want to make sure you all are getting that credit because you put a lot of work into it in helping them succeed. So get it in immediately. 10 days is really the date that we ask you to do it. From a policy perspective, the system may allow beyond that, but that's not, a reason to allow staff to delay putting something in the system. And again, under 2.0, there will be some deadlines that if they're not met, might lock you out, might affect some other things. So we want to, we want to get people mindful of that and getting information in as promptly as possible. If you've got some issues and that's become a problem and you need help with this, from us, let us know. We'll work with you. We'll bring in the regional managers in your area, whoever we need to work with you to get a process that gets data into the system much more efficiently. Maybe it's a training issue and you've got some new staff and they're worried about some things and not the reporting as much. Well, as much as we understand that, we still need to get these in. The biggest and most important thing is that they get in before we submit those quarterly and annual reports. And the quarterly reports come 45 days due into DOL after the completion of a quarter, but we start the process of submitting to test and check for edits, required edits that maybe somebody's entered something incorrectly in the system, and the system, the DOL system won't accept it. That's when Paula reaches out to all of you at times and says, "Hey, we've got some wages that don't look accurate. People have entered 50,000 and then checked hourly. Well, we know they're not making 50,000, and in fact, if you check hourly, the edit check will say it can't be that high because it's just for a wage at an hourly level." So, we really start that process about 10 days after the end of the quarter. And it takes us another 3 to 4 weeks to get all these edit checks clarified. Paula, Ray, and I then review information to make sure we feel like it's as good as it's going to be with what's in the system before Jeff and ultimately SIU under 2.0 will submit final. So that 10 days is really we have a reason for that, and we really would like for staff to stick to that. And then at the end of the year, when we do annual reporting, we do have a little bit more time. It's a 90-day window, although we try to get everything in middle of September, not wait till October 1st, just in case there's something that you know comes back our way that we can address it and make sure we get it in. Because from a reporting perspective, from a sanction perspective at the state level, not only do we have goals to meet on performance, reporting is another half of our success. And if we don't report accurately or timely, it could cost funding that all of you rely on in statewide grants or however we use those funds. So it's important that we do get the reports in on time and they're as accurate as possible. So in a long roundabout way, 10 days is really what we want to see, Robert, and everyone else, but certainly as close to that date as possible. Looks like Paula answered another question. Anyone want their microphone turned on or open up your microphone if you've got any other questions? All right, not seeing anyone open up their microphones. I hope that means everyone's received all the information well, and we'll go ahead and close out our session today. We really appreciate you joining us. Look forward to the next session in May, but you'll see many of us on other webinars, 2.0 developments, or what in the meantime. So have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Again, if you are looking for any of this information, it will be posted on multiple different websites, the Workforce Academy, WorkNet, as well as this PDF for the slides today is in the comments. Yeah, other than that, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for showing up today. See you in May.